anymore.
All right, she accepts no responsibility for the shenanigans about to happen.
Let's just have a good time.
Welcome back.
Blocked or arrested.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sci-Fi and all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. Time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies, a place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So without further ado, I'll try not to mess this up anymore, and we'll introduce you to Kacey Ezell. All right, Kacey.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. My name's Kacey, and I'm awesome, and you should totally get to know me. Yep, super humble. I can't be humble, dude. I'm a pilot. So in my day job, I fly UH-1 helicopters for the Air Force, and I moonlight as a science fiction and fantasy author. I've got books published with Chris Kennedy Publishing and Baen Books, and one with Blackstone Publishing that came out last year, I think. So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but it's a really fun ride. So you guys should totally check it out and come along. Also, I like the wink. Makes people super uncomfortable.
All right. And the next part, dear listener, of that introduction is how we first found them. So I actually found Kacey at, I think it was 2016 or 2017, the RavenCon convention with the famous Moab incident that we discussed off air.
Oh, yeah.
So
was that when we met, JR?
Yeah, that's when we met. And so
yes,
she was at we were both watching a panel on military and fantasy military building that world building for fantasy and sci-fi militaries. And Mr. Mark Wandry, another author, made a joke about the Air Force. And she just stood up and was like, Moab, bitches, and sat back down. I didn't even have to stand up. I thought you stood. It felt like you were standing. There was gravitas there. And so, of course, I had to go and meet her and give her my business card after I stopped dying from laughing.
Hell yeah. If I was part of a Moab drop, I'd be like, all day. Yeah.
So, what about you, Doc? How did you first find the one, the only Miss Kacey Ezell?
Kacey and I actually met at a room party at DragonCon I want to say like when she was just a pilot, a badass pilot, but it's before you started publishing. Being a badass pilot isn't cool in its own amazing right. But yeah, so we actually got to know each other through our mutual love of books. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up and talking about
corsets. I think books and corsets.
Books and corsets, yes. Yep.
If we ever start a podcast, that'll be the name of it, Cisca.
That would be awesome.
Okay, please put me in as a co-host on that podcast.
That would probably have people listening. And why didn't we think of that one? I don't know.
Nobody doesn't have to in a corset, JR.
I'll rock the hell out of a corset. I will. Bet. If someone send me a corset that's listening, I will wear it on air.
Challenge accepted, my friend.
Oh. I said,
right,
I think
I have a 48-inch chest, just in case you're wondering.
So you met her at the DragonCon. Was there anything more to the story, or you just started schmoozing like drunk?
Well, I think actually somebody was talking about being in the military, and I made a comment about being female enlisted, and kind of it differed from Kacey's experience being an Air Force officer versus
slummed it by hanging out with Doc,
an enlisted medic in the Army. So completely different branches, completely end of the spectrum. And so, our mutual friend, James Cochran, like I didn't even, as often can happen when you have so many people in a room and I'm a dunce. Like I didn't catch Kacey's physical response, and James looked at her, and James Cochran, I heard him go, she's in the she did Army, enlisted. And oh, okay.
Oh, like so we should feel sorry for you? That's
no, because there's so many people who have so many
there it is.
Opinions about what it is to be a female in the Army or even in the Air Force, and a lot of them are just speaking out of their ass and not from experience. So, and there's we don't have the bad haircut that signifies that we're in or not when we're off duty.
I still do. It's a horrible haircut.
Fair enough.
Some people never get out of the bad haircut.
So I'm told, though, that's funny that you bring up the bad haircut, Cisca, because I'm told that a couple of dude friends of mine have told me that they can still tell when a chick has been in, not necessarily because of the way that she like dresses or looks, or even if she's in disguise. It's just something about us.
It's how they.
I do think there's something to the posture.
It's posture,
but I think we were both wearing corsets at the time, so our posture and corsets are
quite vertical.
It's quite vertical and quite shoulders back, straight up straight.
Right. Yep.
So you know, corsets, posture, army posture, they all look kind of the same.
Yeah.
Especially in the
anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Saturday.
Yeah, I've had people a lot of times come up and not understand that I really was the vet. Like, I was wearing my field jacket one day at KSU because we had a blizzard come through, and it was cold as fuck. And somebody
made your hands in your pockets.
I did not have my hands in my pockets, but I did have on my field jacket. And somebody made a comment about women who steal their husbands' uniforms.
Hold on, where was your PT belt?
Did not have a PT belt. I was out of the service.
That's why you had the blizzard. Because you weren't wearing your PT belt.
It deflects blizzards. Everybody knows this. I'm ashamed of you.
Well, you know what? I was really hoping to get out of the exam. So.
Oh well, then
and this
you did it perfectly.
Made a crack comment about how about women who steal their husband's uniform items, and that kid never came around the science atrium again.
His body was found 2 years later.
Oof. Oof.
No, I was science atrium chemists. The body was never found.
I was checking in at a hotel one time and handed the guy my military ID, my CAC card, my active duty military ID. And he was like, he looked at it, he was like, "Oh, is your husband in the service?" And I was like, "No."
Try again.
He used to be.
And CAC stands for Common Access Card.
Common Access
you
Card.
Aren't privy.
Yes. Sorry.
No. I like the CAC.
I mean, who doesn't really?
I think as a doc, I think she's always just happy when the conversation doesn't start with, "Can you check out this rash, please?"
I got this thing growing on my wang. Could you take a look at it?
I literally used to open up the door and people would go, "Well, you're dying of cancer," and close the door on them.
That's harsh.
All right, can you write that in a profile so I don't have to go to PT or what?
So Nick, how did you first find out about the one, the only, the lovely Miss Kacey Ezell?
As always, I've met her through YouTube chuckleheads.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were her first guest on the Corsets and Books podcast.
No, that's I'm a time traveler. You can't just be giving away trade secrets like that. Man. That's not cool. No, I met Kacey a couple of days ago when we started the chat.
Yeah.
Turns out I was like, I don't know what Cisca was drinking, but she's like, she's of Japan, and I'm like, that's a really weird way to phrase that. She's in Japan, but cool. I'm like, all right, cool. Then I'll make an adjustment. I have the weekend off, so whenever we want to do this, cool. And then we had a little bit of backstage fun and had some laughs. We're going to have some more laughs now. So, and as always, I'm always, just because of JR and Doc here, my library is just growing of shit I need to read soon. So, and I'm just a dumb grunt, so it takes me a while. I mean, if there's no pictures. We did promise you we were going to do a book review. I guess it's a book review of your picture books of some comic you're going to pick for us.
Oh,
one of my comics?
Well, not necessarily one of yours. We could, but whichever comic you pick, we'll do a review episode on that too.
Oh yeah, I already have one in mind. So we're going to go with Daredevil, obviously, because I'm a huge fan. So I'll message you anyway.
All right. So now it's your favorite question, Doc.
Religion: Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Just once I would like to be able to ask this question. I'm just saying.
Fine, you can ask the next one.
So
yeah,
you're asking me which is my favorite?
Yes.
I mean, it's like, oh, I have such an inappropriate comment. I don't know if I should say it.
Weapons free. Weapons free.
Do it. You're clear hot.
That's like asking me to choose between oral, anal, and vaginal. I mean, they all.
God, I love this woman.
And there
I mean,
goes the
we just lost all our
family-friendly
sponsors, but I don't even care at this point. This
I
chick's
thought you were
rotten.
going to say it's like picking your favorite child.
Okay, if those three
I
things.
know, or that.
what's
Or
your
that.
favorite?
Yes, you could say that too. That would be more appropriate.
Depends on the mood, I guess, is the appropriate response.
Right. They all have their place. They all have their place.
Yeah, they do.
So I hope you, when we post this, just post a disclaimer. Mom, please don't watch this.
Oh, my mom is.
Oh,
She knows
I love
how I
this
am.
show. I love our guests.
My mom is also
Holy
a
God.
retired officer, so you know
Okay, so she's probably heard worse.
she is for sure. She has said worse.
As a young lieutenant, I'm probably sure she had to do staff duty at one point and probably saw worse.
Oh, yeah.
So was she Air Force too?
Yeah, my mom. Both my parents were actually. My mom and dad were both Air Force JAGs. Dad did 20 years and retires in 05, and mom did 24 years and retires in 06. So
does your
Oh,
mom
wow.
and dad salute her?
Her mom was a full bird.
she was full bird. Yeah,
That's awesome.
is I guess, and she retired, so she technically still is.
Daddy was a light colonel. I hope she just threw that in his face like every day.
Like
No,
stand at
but-
attention, salute, you know.
So there's
No,
a
Like
reason
fold
why
the
you're
laundry
still
there,
married.
light bird.
So the thing that was funny is that they like came in at the same time, but Dad's data rank was slightly before hers, and he so he would always put on rank like a couple months before she would, and when they got promoted to major, he pinned on, and like they would drive to work together, and that morning. She walked out of the house and he was already outside waiting for her because of course he was. And he like runs up and he's like, "Aren't you going to salute me, Captain?" She's like, "No, Major, because we sleep together and that takes precedence."
Boom!
I hope he remembered that for later because he
And
was
it
totally going to
sure
need
does
it.
too.
Yeah, so he retired right around the time she got promoted to 06. So
That's
it
awesome.
Dodge
was-
that bullet.
yeah. So they both had
Just
really,
salute you, Captain. Man,
really
your dad
good-
has some brass ones because I would never have said that.
yeah, he does. He's pretty cool. They're both
I-
my parents are pretty cool.
I try not to dry the well whenever I can. You know what I mean?
Solid advice.
Nick, did you want to ask the next one?
No. You take care of it. But on the next one, I want to ask the religion question because I love that question. You always get it.
I know,
And
because
I'm jealous.
Because she kind of scares us a little bit. We're not going to lie. She's a little bit.
Tolkien, Game of Thrones, or Harry Potter?
Oh, God, I love
Tolkien.
these questions.
Not even a question.
Just
Fucking Battle of the Somme,
Bam.
bitches. What do you want?
Fair point. Fair point. They even addressed this issue on the
I love it. I
epic
love
rap battles with.
That was
George R. R.
so
Martin.
good. That is my
and
favorite epic
Tolkien.
rap battle ever.
I was
ever.
dying. And then, of course, my kids were younger and they repeated some of that, unfortunately, to their English teacher. I had some explaining to do the next day.
it's like, listen.
That is literature, though. They're learning
is.
shit. I mean, come on.
It-
now.
it's- yeah, it's kind of like have you guys ever listened to Thug Notes?
No.
Where the guy, I mean, it's like he's dressed up.
Oh, yeah.
He puts
Yeah.
on the gangster persona and he
Yeah.
discusses like literary classics.
Oh, I've
Yeah,
seen that.
I saw that. I saw the one he did for Pride and Prejudice, which is one of my favorite books of all time.
That one was classic. He did. I think he did one on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
He what else did he do?
He's
He
done
did a
a
lot
lot
of
of
Shakespeare stuff. Oh man, just go on there. There's just tons of content.
Yeah.
And if you're
This is
listening to the
very
guy that
books.
does
It's
Thug
good.
Notes, you owe us a coffee.
All
He'll reach
right.
out to us. Let's do an interview.
Okay.
That'd be amazing. Can
That
I come
would
be
very amazing.
in that interview too?
Absolutely. It'll be a
I just wanna
cornucopia
hang out with you
gang
guys
banging
while you-
of knowledge.
It's like a gangbang for your brain.
I'm going to
God,
have to
just
put
bring
the
it on.
explicit tag.
Bring
It's
it on.
official. Weapons
So-
free. It's explicit now.
Yeah, you're gonna need like a trigger warning on this episode.
It's my
Might
safety
be
right here,
right.
sir.
Do not listen while your kids are in the room.
Well, we only said like the F word like twice, so we're good.
Anyway,
And
last
this is-
two plays.
Hold on. This is where we put the disclaimer that Kacey Ezell is speaking as Kacey Ezell, and her opinions do not reflect the opinions or positions of the United States Air Force or their blah 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 insert legal mumbo jumbo. I'm not sure
Or
what all we're
anyone.
supposed to say.
But they do coincide with co-host Nick Garber's views on stuff. We'll just put it out there. I agree with her. I think she's awesome.
Well, there you go.
Thanks, bro.
Person for Apogee Comics.
Nobody reads my shit anyways.
We're working on that.
We'll get you there, bud. We'll get you there.
I don't even know what to do. I don't know what to do with my hands.
I got a newsletter. I'll pimp your shit. It's fine.
I'm not going to answer that question, Nick. Okay. What was
it's NC-17 podcast right now. I love it.
Yep. If you do answer, he'll go blind though. So let's just move on.
I've been blind since 1997. But I digest.
Poor Cisca.
I'm trying to be grown up here. Okay. Which was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Well, it was Pern, so you tell me.
Sci-fi. Up there, you're not allowed to say anything.
Well, Anne McCaffrey characterized Pern as sci-fi, so I figured she fucking knows since she invented it. But yeah, it was The Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey.
See, there's a reason why I love her so hard. She's like a sister. So
so hard.
What is it that you love about the sci-fi and the fantasy genres?
Possibilities, I guess. It's so here's the thing. This is what I love about stories in general, right? Stories exist, I think, to help us explore our own humanity in all its like dark little corners and all those little places in our souls that don't necessarily always get to see the light of day. Now that sounds really like dark, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, but sometimes some of this stuff is easier to digest and deal with in a hypothetical situation. Things like the really strong emotions that happen between parent and child, for example, or longtime husband and wife, and yada yada yada. And to me, it's the emotional piece of the human experience that is always so super fascinating. And sci-fi and fantasy allow us the possibility of, I think, exploring those places in our souls and in ourselves in a way that other genres might not necessarily do. Does that make sense, or am I just kind of talking out my ass a little bit?
No, you're absolutely on track. I just keep going. I love where you're going with this.
Yeah, so that's what I love about sci-fi and fantasy. That and the dragons, for sure. 100
dragons, yes.
All in on the dragons.
I get to express the duality of mankind and dragons.
That's right.
That's awesome.
It makes it fun. You can have your vegetables.
I have a peace sign on my helmet. Duality of man.
Duality of man.
I like that movie reference.
I'm glad you got it.
Choke yourself.
There's a story behind that and how I watched that movie. I didn't know there was a Vietnam scene for the longest time. I just thought it was basic training because everybody turned it off after that.
Yeah, they only show the first half of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was in my mid-20s and I was like, is this the extended cut? Like, no, this is the theatrical cut. And I'm like, what?
There's more? Yeah.
This is awesome.
All right. Speaking of awesome, the next question is yours, Ranger Nick.
Oh my God, it's always mine. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start this question off with another question. How do you know when there is a military pilot in the room?
They'll tell you.
Exactly. They will tell you, which leads me to the next question. What's your first memory of engaging in the science fiction fantasy genre?
So I was about 7 years old and I read really early and advanced very quickly in my reading. And basically I wouldn't leave my mom alone because I was constantly like, hey mom, I need something new to read. I need something new to read. I need something new to read. Until finally, when I was 7, she put a copy of Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Drums into my hands, was like, here, this is for kids, go away. So I did. I went away.
Just
give me a minute. God. And so I did. I went away and I read it and I fell in love with the concept of dragons and fire lizards and just all of it. And I started begging her for more. And so very shortly after that, when I was 7, we were living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we were getting ready to PCS which means move for those of you who are not connected with the military. My parents had just gotten orders
Permanent
to the
change
Philippines.
of station.
Yeah. My parents had just gotten orders to the Philippines. And so we were getting ready to move internationally. And so for that, trip, which as you can imagine is kind of
it's a nightmare.
Epic length, especially with 3 kids, and I was the oldest at 7 years old. So for that trip, my mom bought me the original Dragon Riders of Pern trilogy. So that's Dragon Flight, Dragon Quest, and the White Dragon. And that was sort of my
that's a lot of pages
gift. Yeah, right. I mean, you would think that would keep me occupied.
Is that something that your mother read as well, or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So that's how you were introduced to it, is through your mom. Yeah, that's awesome.
Through my mom. Yep. Yeah.
It's
Mom's a big sci-fi fantasy fan. In fact, Cisca, I think, has interacted with her online. She's
online. I really want her to come to a convention one day.
She had tickets and she was gonna go to LibertyCon 2020.
Well, she had tickets to LibertyCon 2022.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So one of these years she'll get to him. But yeah, she came to 2007. We went to RavenCon in Richmond, and she came to that one with me, and she had a pretty good time. But yeah, she's awesome. She's a nerd. She's one of us. So.
One of us.
Oh, don't get the chanting going, or do I don't know. Okay, so obviously you have a love for the fantasy genre, and that has transitioned to your writing and writing stories in it. Can you elaborate more on how your early love and introduction into the genre is kind of expressed in your current writings?
So let me think about that. I think what really spoke to me about the Pern stories was the connection between dragon and writer, right? Because that's one of those things that I think, when you're, only you two boys probably don't know anything about this, but Cisca knows what I'm talking about. When you're a 7-year-old girl, when you're a tween girl, that's the reason girl and horse stories are a whole subgenre of their own, is because you crave connection with a being who fully understands you and is totally focused on you. It's just sort of a
dragon, so much cooler.
Yeah.
Well, just to specify, boys get it when they're a little older and they join the military and they learn the connection between man and rifle.
Sure. No, and I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing that something similar happens with boys. It's just I've read those books. I'm definitely tracking on what you're talking about. Yeah, and it's just a developmental thing, right? Well, so that hit me right at that time, and that I think was sort of the first exposure that I had to this idea of boy and dog stories. It's the first exposure that I had to this idea of you can explore these feelings and these connections that you have. You can explore them through stories. And so I try to, when I am writing stories and I am writing about interactions between characters, I try to really kind of tap into that essence of emotional connection, whatever the connection may be, whether it's, I love you or I hate you or, we're going to fight to the death. You should feel something about it, right? There should be some kind of feeling
an
about
emotional response or connection.
And because that is what will connect with readers. And so that's something that I really try to bring to my work is the emotional piece that will draw the reader in and make the reader feel something.
No, absolutely.
Okay, the next one's still yours.
And it's so abruptly, and I'm thinking about it, I'm yeah, she's absolutely right. And I'm I know I got another question to ask you, so we're just gonna get to that.
No, it's cool.
Okay, so you have a lot of life experience and a lot of real world experience due to your
yes, I'm old as fuck. Thank you very much.
As a writer of Dragon, no, it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. Many authors let their own real life experiences influence the stories that they tell. Were there any specific formidable moments in your life that really shaped you as a storyteller?
Yes, there were a lot of them, but it's more in the aggregate, I guess I would say. So my latest work that just came out is it's a novella called Sundown, and it was published by Chris Kennedy Publishing's Beyond Terra imprint, which is the imprint that is dedicated to kind of the expanding the universe of Chuck Gannon's Kane Riordan series, I guess is how it's pronounced. Okay. And Sundown is a story. Sundown is the second of two of those novellas that I've written. And the character that I focus on in the first one and a little bit also in the second one is she's a Huey pilot, right? So that's obviously inspired by my own experience. So I write about flying, the way that I experience flying, I guess, because I know that that's something that people enjoy and people respond to, because it's not an experience that everyone necessarily gets to have. And so I know that that's something that, that people value in their stories and stuff, is that sort of window into the world. But it's not any one particular moment in flying. It's just like my experiences, I've got almost 3,000 hours in the Huey. And so I just sort of take all of that and put it on the page, So there was this one review of the way the Murphy's Law List series, which is what Sundown and Promises, the first novella that I wrote, work, is that it's a group of us authors. We each write a novella, and then at the end of that season, Chuck, the IP holder, the creator of the universe, he takes all of those novellas and kind of puts them together with some additional connective tissue into a huge like novel, right? And ties them all together. It's actually a really cool concept and creates a really, really cool product. Well, there was a review for the first omnibus edition called Murphy's Law List that was the reviewer said something about I forget how he said it, but basically it was like, these guys obviously don't know anything about, the military. They need to do more than just yeah, it was pretty epic. Like, they need to do more than just a quick Wikipedia search to find out, yada, yada, yada. And Chuck posted that on his fan group in Facebook, was like, this made me angry. And my kind of tongue in cheek response to that was, well, to be fair, I've never had an engine shot out from under me. So yeah, that's never happened, but that was because they missed. So yeah, that's an example of sort of bringing, real life experiences that have shaped my writing, I guess.
Did it hit the bird, or did it go completely by?
No, it went by.
We took a round to the plate in front of our 50 on our turret, and we actually did a bullseye around where the gouge on the armor was and put better luck next time, fuckheads.
That's funny.
That's the response if I ever heard one.
I mean, you gotta laugh at that stuff. So, all right, that was an interesting. So, speaking of military science fiction, your bio mentions, and you just talked about your time in the U.S. Air Force. So, we ask all authors who are also military veterans this question. But how do you feel like your time in the Air Force affects the stories you tell? Is it just that experience with the piloting, or is there more?
Oh no, there's for sure more. So my time in the Air Force has really shaped who I am as an adult, right? Because I graduated from high school and I went straight to the Air Force Academy. So I have never been an adult and not been a member of the United States military. And then you add to that the fact that I grew up as a military brat. The military as an institution has been part of my life since I was 6 years old, which is most of what I can remember, right? So yeah, it's shaped who I am, and you can't write, you write from who you are, right? So I think that my ideas of right and wrong, my ideas of how to interact with other people, of loyalty and leadership and communication, all of those things were shaped by my military experience, because I learned all of those things within the context of my military service. So, if you've got you're talking about like, one of my first published stories was the story Not in Vain in John Ringo's Black Tide Rising anthology, edited by John Ringo and Gary Poole. And it's a story of Cisca's going to show it because she's got it. That's awesome. It's a story of zombie apocalypse during the fall, and there's this cheerleading coach who is on her way home with her team. Yeah, with her. No, that's the new one.
This is the new one.
That's the second one. Yeah. But it's the story of this cheerleading coach and her team, and they're on their way home from cheerleading competition when basically shit goes to hell, right? So that story, one of the major themes of that story is teamwork and leadership, and how do you protect the people under your care, and how do they work together to protect each other and stuff. And all of that was shaped by two experiences that I had. One was being a military officer, working with a crew, commanding a crew, in order to get a job done. And the second one was being a cheerleading mom and seeing how cheerleading teams work together and stuff. It's funny. I have had to defend that story so many times in fandom circles because I think a lot of fans have this mental stereotype maybe of what cheerleading is all about. And I have had to be like, look, I have seen 6-year-old kids be taught to, when they do these building stunts, these pyramid stunts where they lift other little kids up in the air or throw them up in the air. There's one rule, and that is that the flyer doesn't hit the ground. The flyer is the person being lifted or thrown. Right. Flyer doesn't hit the ground. No matter what happens, the flyer doesn't hit the ground. So if the flyer's coming down and it's coming down bad, all the bases, all the back spots, all the front spots, if there are any, everybody's job is to get under the flyer and catch them. And I have seen 6-year-old kids sacrifice their bodies to protect their teammates from a worse injury. And that's pretty cool, right? And so,
that's awesome.
It's I've had to defend that story a lot because people are like, why would you write about cheerleaders? And I'm like, come on, man. You don't know.
I remember you talking about that one time, and I remember you said that, and I went, and I literally went, yeah, cheerleaders may not be badass, but they're still people too. And you went, no, Cisca, they are.
No, I'm going to argue with you also, Cisca. They are pretty badass. They're very athletic.
I know, but I was going into it from the experience of the cheerleaders that I saw. Which
the ones I grew up with were a bunch of bitches. So let them checks fall. Let them hit the dirt.
Because I was also kind of like, why don't cheerleaders have the right to be in the story, dude?
Yeah.
So there's a difference, I think, between what they're doing at competition level, which is next level, and just the general high school team cheerleaders. And not to say there isn't overlap, but
there's a difference between Pee-wee football and the NFL too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's all levels, right?
Usually about 200 pounds.
But most people, their experience is limited entirely to what they saw at the high school with the Mean Girls on the TV shows,
Yeah.
So I think it's that limited exposure that's for most people.
They hid pom-poms in my locker trying to convince me to go out to the cheerleading squad.
But that's my point is that there's a stereotype, just like, fans have struggled with the stereotype of being nerds, living in their parents' basement, playing video games and not showering.
I put my glasses on to accentuate the stereotype. I can do that.
Right. Yeah. For as long as people have been struggling with that stereotype, cheerleaders have been struggling with the stereotype of the mean girl who, when really it's just a sport, right? It's a sport, and like any team sport, if it's if you have a good coach, which not all sports do, but not all teams do, but that's true of every sport, right?
Oh,
but if you have a good coach, you're going to learn discipline, you're going to learn athleticism, you're going to learn team building, you're going to learn leadership, you're going to learn followership, and those are all really, really useful.
And valor. I think that's probably the most important thing if you have a good coach is you learn how to be valorous.
Right. Loyalty, camaraderie, all that shit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Next week on Dancing with the Zoomies. All right. So did you actually
tell them Karens to shut up?
I did competitive rock climbing once in theater. Competitive theater. Okay.
That's fun. Same thing though, right?
Okay, you want to know more about competitive theater.
All right. And moving on after that awkward silence. So did you get negative reviews? It's clearly they just did a Google search on cheerleading.
No, I don't think I don't know. I haven't looked at the reviews on that one in a while, but as far as I know, no. So
all right. So speaking, drawing this back full circle, because this is about you. So we're going to focus on you. It's all about you right now. So
we're all about pimping your ride.
That's right. So do you, because you're a pilot, so it's always about you. So do you draw on people that you knew in the military when you're writing your stories?
Say that again. Do I do what?
do you draw on people you knew in the military when you're writing your stories?
For sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. But then also people that I knew, outside the military. So going back to the whole Black Tide Rising series, the third anthology is coming out in June, and it's called what is it called?
I don't remember.
I forgot. Anyway,
you're probably in it.
I am in it. I
am.
John Ringo will flog you later for this, but go on.
That's not his style.
A name like John Ringo, it should be.
Yeah, right.
Johnny Ringo.
No, it's anyway, the third one, I have a story in that, and it's the story of after the zombie apocalypse has happened and people are starting to kind of rebuild or whatever. We Will Rise is the name of the anthology. We Will Rise, and comes out in June. And my story in that one is about a family that is a real family that I know, that I called their dad up and was like, hey, can I use your family and make them survivors of this zombie apocalypse, building a heathen community? And he was like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. So
it's a lot better than can I kill you?
Hey, can I use your family as cannon fodder in a zombie apocalypse?
So I made them moonshiners that live up on a mountain. And it's the story is called A Thing or Two, and it is inspired in large part by the song Copperhead Road by Steve Earle. So.
All right, Kacey, my zombie apocalypse plan is most people are going to be looking for food, water, and rations. I got that in spades along with guns and ammo. However, I don't know how to make booze. So what you just described is the first family I'm looking for. I food, rations, and building a community as long as they provide me an ample amount of booze.
Dude, YouTube that shit. You can build a still.
I'm lazy. I got enough reload ammo, drawing comic books. I'm trying during the zombie apocalypse. I'm going to try and bring killing and artistry back to the world because it's going to be lost. I'm going to be the next Hemingway / Picasso.
Dahmer.
Okay.
Dahmer. Ouch. Hurtful.
I know. Needs more cowbell.
Needs more.
All cowbell. Right. So we've talked about how your time in the U.S. Air Force, which is kind of like the military, has affected the stories you tell. But
Moab bitch.
How has it affected the kind of stories you read?
Consumption.
It's given me a lot less tolerance for bullshit, I guess.
Every military TV show, book.
I mean, a little. I try not to. I try to suspend disbelief and remember that it's just there for the entertainment value.
Just go over the top.
And it's annoying as fuck when every single fucking show has to show your helicopter getting blown out of the sky just for visual effect. It's like, come on, man. Think of something else.
Really rough on any children that you might have on a deployment.
Most of the situations it puts himself in.
Right, as entertaining as all of that is, if we talk over
each
other, we can't. The viewers can't hear. So one at a time, please, class.
What?
You were all talking at the same time.
Oh, they can pick it apart. We have a very smart audience.
So Cisca pointed out that watching movies with helicopters being blown out of the sky must be really tough for kids when I'm deployed, and yeah, I think that's probably true. Certainly my kids are not, unique in that. I think a lot of kids who have parents serving in harm's way, I think their caretakers kind of have to curate their consumption a little bit and just make sure that, that they, even just to things with the news, right?
During the pandemic shutdown, my son had to live out of state from me because of what I do as a day job and how things were working. So yeah, it was very they had to get very careful about how they covered the news, especially because Atlanta was such a hot zone.
Yeah, and it's tough, but honestly, that's part of it, and it's interesting. It's interesting that this is coming up right now because I don't know if you guys know this, but this is actually something I'm kind of passionate about. April has been designated the month of the military child, and so it's something that at least here, especially here on an overseas base, right, where we our life is very much centered on this community here, and the base offers a lot of like programs and celebrations and stuff for the kids, which is really great. But I think having grown up as a military brat and given birth to 2 military brats myself, they have both advantages and disadvantages that come with a parent who spends their life in service. And one of the great advantages is the opportunity to do things like move to Japan and experience other cultures and get to know people that you wouldn't necessarily get to know if you just stayed in your home community, wherever that might happen to be. I'm from originally from South Dakota, which is a pretty homogenous place. There's not a lot of like cultural diversity. It's getting more so. Yeah, this is a small town area, pretty rural. Based. Yeah, and which again, nothing wrong with that. But because I'm in the military and because we've moved around, my kids have had the opportunity to meet with people and experience other cultures like Japanese culture or mid-Atlantic East Coast culture, that they wouldn't necessarily have gotten to see otherwise. That being said, it's tough, man. It is tough when you're 6 years old and your mom deploys for a year and all you know is she's flying helicopters in Iraq with Iraqi pilots, and you get to talk to her like once a week thanks to the miracle of technology, but all you really know is you just miss your mom. You just miss your mom. So anyway, I kind of forgot why I started down this digression, but but it's something that I'm pretty passionate about.
No, it's about whatever you want. This is your platform. This is all about you.
I think JR asked to. We started, I think, talking about. Oh, I know. It was he asked you if what you do affects how you engage with the media and reading, and you were like, yeah, and it's really great when everybody chooses the same helicopter, which happens to be mine, to die.
Well, the reason they all choose Hueys is because they're cheap and easily recognizable.
And also responsible for 3 crushed discs in my back.
Yeah.
Well,
because I hit the skid as I tried to jump out of one and I didn't leap out far enough and bang my ass. Not
recommended.
Not recommended.
I got hurt when I jumped off my ride too. That Humvee was so far off the ground. Let me tell you.
6 inches, you freaking leg.
So
hold your head in shame. That's why your camera's not on right now. You can earn those privileges back later.
This is I don't know if this is true or not, but this is something that a flight doc told me. You guys know the story of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge?
Okay.
The
Sound of Narrows Bridge in Tacoma?
I think so.
Washington
it was
State,
like in
right?
the 60s, huh? Yeah. It was in the 60s, and it's a bridge. If you Google it, just Google Tacoma Narrows Bridge and look at the videos. You can see there's YouTube videos of it. It's this bridge that like tears itself apart. And the reason it tore itself apart is because it was over this gorge, and the wind came whipping through, and it got the bridge moving and vibrating at its own resonant frequency. And when it's right, it causes it to disintegrate. Just like when a singer breaks a glass with their voice.
With her voice.
What they're doing when they sing that note is that note causes the glass to vibrate at its resonant frequency. Holy fuck, can I speak? And it shatters. I had a flight doc tell me one time, he might have been fucking with me, but I had him tell me one time that the Huey vibrates at the resonant frequency of the human spine. I was like, well, that's fucking cool. Thanks.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Most of us have some type of degenerative disc issue after flying for a number of years. So,
and resonant frequency is also one of the key aspects of the multiverse theory. If we can vibrate cells at the same or different levels of a resonant frequency for another barrier, blah, blah, blah. I'm not smart. Everybody knows this.
Stop talking quantum mechanics. It's so funny and bad.
This is why we have hand wavium. It's 131-ish on the periodic table.
This is not the science you know.
All right.
I know a little. I just don't know how to like use the words to convey it. Like I can see it in my head. I put it in my comic books for God's sakes, but like writing it down like on the cuff, I'm just like, yeah, and then like there's a Canuter valve and a muffler bearing with quantum.
That's awesome. All right. Sounds good to me.
You got to perform emergency surgery on his pride and transition to that's the question.
Transitioning to the fan stuff.
I don't have pride. We all know that.
I know, that's why he's here. Do you have any cool fan art or had any cool cosplays of one of your characters yet?
Yeah, so my first solo novel is called Minds of Men, and it's set in World War II in 1943 with 8th Air Force B-17 bombers, and the name of the aircraft that the main character flies on is called Pretty Cass, and I named her after my best friend Cassie, who has this amazing cosplay that she did that was based on a Vargas sketch from the 1940s. Which, if you're not familiar with Edwin Vargas, he was the pinup artist for Esquire magazine in the 40s, and a lot of the nose art that dudes would paint on their airplanes was based on his.
This is where I shine,
artwork.
you two knuckles. This is where the
so back in the day, before I ever got published or started writing, a group of friends and I, we all decided to do Varga Girl cosplays for Dragon Con, and my friend Cassie had this beautiful one that she put together that was ballerina themed with point shoes and everything. And so I named the plane Pretty Cass after her and her cosplay. And then when the book came out, she was like, "That's awesome," and she revived her cosplay to come back and do that. So sort of, kind of, I guess I claim it as cool fan cosplay for my.
And that was
a
Dragon
book.
Award finalist.
It was a Dragon Award finalist, yeah, and she wore the costume to the finals, which was pretty cool.
Yes,
what's really cool is in the movie Watchmen,
and the badass award goes to Kacey again.
To replicate that style in the opening scenes of the Watchmen movie. With, Sally Jupiter. Yeah.
I actually.
I'm going to share real quick a example of that art. I did a quick Google while you were talking.
It is just beautiful.
And since we've already got the family friendly warning going, right, this would be an example of the style of the nose art they were doing back in the day, which is risky, but for people who were about to die, they could do whatever the hell they want, as far as I'm concerned.
This dude straight up killed a train.
How did he kill a train?
I don't know.
Because it has the train indicator on there.
Oh,
it killed a train.
Yeah. They were doing probably one of the German resupply train stations.
Thought he was talking about the artist, not the.
No, not the artist. This plane here from the image. It's awesome. No, I love pinup art. My wife was a pinup model for a while. Okay, I need to find that outfit now.
So this is, I don't know if this is going to translate, but this is another pinup related story. When I was deployed, I flew the Mi-17 HIP, which is a Soviet designed aircraft that was owned by the Iraqi Air Force. And the audio warning system in that, what we would call the bitchin' Betty, she had a Russian accent. So we called her Nagging Natasha. And we couldn't paint nose art on the aircraft, obviously, because, they didn't belong to us. But we sort of adopted this one particular Varga girl as our unofficial nose art. And I have her tattooed on my right thigh. And let's see, I don't know if you guys can see this picture, but
hold on. Let me make you the full screen.
That's Natasha.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting,
and you can't
side note. That was the name of my sniper rifle in Iraq, was Natasha.
Natasha, nice. Yeah. So you can't really see it from this sketch or from this picture, but Edwin Vargas always signed his art, and it's kind of hidden over here. Oops, wrong side. Over here. So by my leg, but I had the tattoo artist sign it in the same spot where Vargas's signature would have been.
Oh,
so yeah, it's really cool. I love my tattoo.
I gotta get some of my artwork on you, and I mean that in the strictest professional sense.
Like pinup style artwork.
I do all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Because dude, let's talk. Because
this is me right here.
Yeah, I have about 200 hours in the Mi-17, and I have this beautiful leg piece commemorating that. I have nothing for the Huey, of which I have almost 3,000 hours in, and I have an idea, but I don't.
By the way,
I
did the math. That's 125 days.
Left in the military?
No. If you 3,000 divided by 24.
How much time you got in the bird?
Oh.
125 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy, I can translate from enlisted to officer.
I can too, but it's okay.
No, Kacey, hit me up. I'll draw anything you want.
Yeah, man. Let's talk. Thanks. That's very
I
generous of
I
you.
sent your happy ass friend request. Hopefully you accept it.
We'll
She
see.
will.
I'll think about it.
All right, well, dwell on it. Have a glass of wine, bourbon, beer. I don't know what you drink.
Red Bull, sugar-free Red Bull.
Because it gives you wings.
You put it in your coffee? Because I hear that makes it even better.
Don't bring up my past experiences, JR. You know how I feel about that.
Anyways, moving on. So have you ever
Moving
been
on.
asked for your autograph out in public away from a convention or a signing?
Have you met fans out in the wild?
Have I met fans in the wild? I have not. I've not been asked for my autograph. Well, no, that's not true. At work, I have. Because I've had people. I've had people at work that hear me talk about writing or whatever, and they give my books a try, and they come in, they're like, "Hey, this was awesome! I loved it. Can you sign it?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I can sign it."
I mean, if signing for the speeding ticket counts,
goddamn.
if signing for the speeding ticket counts, they've asked for my autograph before too.
That's right.
Nobody knows who you are, JR, but I love you anyway.
I signed for my flight hours, but no, yeah, I have signed my.
That's true.
I have signed my book at work a couple times.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you sorry, I just blanked. Have you ever spotted somebody reading one of your books?
Only at conventions. Yeah. People that I didn't know. Like, I'll be walking down the hall or whatever, and I'll see them have like a copy of Minds of Men, and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool. But
see, what she can't tell you is because NDAs were signed and court orders were issued, and the time she crawled in windows, all
Assassins were hired.
Yeah, I mean, where do you think she got those ideas for her cat assassins? I mean, I'm not saying it was her, but
well, I declined the contract. I just did not feel comfortable in a cat suit. It's really tight in the crotch.
Okay. So what is your favorite story or a fun story you just want to tell us about you interacting with a fan? Because I'm wondering, because I've seen some of these interactions, so I'm wondering if some of the ones we've had photographed.
I don't know. I mean, most people they're just super cool, and they're so kind. And I have kind of a funny story about you, Cisca. Would that work?
I'll mute her if I have to, but we want to hear that.
I think it was LibertyCon, and I was there with Marisa, and Cisca was there, and so I don't drink alcohol, but I think I was the only one in the room who.
I take up the slack for you.
Yeah, you were in the hotel.
I had a lot of alcohol at that point in the evening. It was pretty late in the evening. Anyway, my friend Marisa Wolf, who I co-wrote Assassin and Hunter with, and we co-edited Negotiation, all of which are from Chris Kennedy Publishing, part of the Four Horsemen universe. Anyway, Cisca, Marisa, and I are hanging out and talking, and I said something about I had just had a birthday or whatever, and Cisca was like, "Oh, how old are you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I just turned 40." She was like, "Shut up." I'm like, "You shut up." She's like, "You're not 40. I'm like, yeah, I am. She's like, "No, I don't believe it." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'm 40. I was born in 1977. That's how math works." She was just arguing with me for like 30 minutes about how there was no fucking way that I could be 40 years old. And I'm like, "Cisca, I am 40. Like, shut up about it."
I really thought you were younger.
And she got really mad. She was like vehement that this was
like, "I'm not that old yet. You can't be that old yet."
I'm sorry, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That's how math works. so that's one of my funnier interactions with anybody, honestly, was arguing about my age.
I thought you were gonna go
with our resident Doc Cisca.
To be fair, it was like 1 a.m. So I said, lots of alcohol had been consumed.
All the best stories in the military start with
her heavily and being like, "No, you're 50.
Yeah, no good story ever starts over a glass of milk, I'll tell you that.
Or a salad. So
yeah,
there
I
I
really
was.
thought at first you were going
I'm totally going to write a story that's awesome that starts with someone having milk in a salad now.
Yeah, it's called Star Wars. It was done with blue milk. I don't know if they were having salad because they were in a desert, but
they were just tossing it.
Blue milk was definitely involved.
All right, so this is the part of the interview. Only an hour in, and we're just now getting to the book because we had so many side trails. But this is
Call
where
it an extended episode and charge twice the price. Done.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
No,
So
not
this is
sorry.
where we
This
talk
is
about.
editing.
Hush, Nick, you're grounded. So don't make me
I'm
call
not a
Grandpa
pilot.
Walt.
That's Kacey.
Don't make me call Grandpa Walt. So this is the part where we talk about everything Kacey Ezell has written. So can you give us the Reader's Digest of your bibliography?
Oh
That's
my God.
college word for the day.
I kind of wrote a lot of shit, dude. Okay, so my solo novels are start with Minds of Men, which, like I said, is a kind of an alternate history fantasy. Thank you. And it's set in World War II with 8th Air Force bombers and psychic women who are flying on board. The sequel to that is The World Asunder, and it is set about 3-ish years later, or no, about 5-ish years later, at the opening of the Berlin airlift. And the protagonist of the second book is the antagonist of the first book. So good luck with that. The third book in that series is I'm not quite halfway through it, and it is slow going, but that one will be set in Vietnam. So, and there will be Hueys involved. So we got that going for us. So that's my my current solo work. In addition to that, let's see. Marisa Wolf and I have written Negotiation and Hunter, or sorry, we've written Assassin and Hunter for the Four Horsemen universe, published by Chris Kennedy Publishing. And then we also edited the anthology Negotiation, which is a Depic themed anthology. The Depic are the cat-like race of assassins within the Four Horsemen universe. So those are a lot of fun. People like those a lot. I also wrote Weaver with oh, there's my cover art. Yay. I also wrote Weaver with Mark Wandry, also in the Four Horsemen universe. Mark Wandry is the creator of the Four Horsemen universe, so that one was a lot of fun to do. That one has focuses on one of the Tortantula characters, which the Tortantulas are like big ass spiders the size of a Volkswagen that will tear your shit up. They're crazy. And then I have been in every Four Horsemen anthology with one exception. And that exception I wrote the foreword for. So if you pick up any Four Horsemen anthology, you'll find something by me in it.
I think you and Terry Mixon are the only two authors that have been in all of them.
Terry Mixon has had a story in all of them. I've not had a story in all of them, but I have written something in all of them. Yeah. And then so that's the Four Horsemen universe, which is fantastic. And you guys should definitely check it out. If you like military sci-fi, it's right up your alley. In addition to that, Griffin Barber and I wrote Second Chance Angel, which came out last fall from Blackstone Publishing. It's also available in audiobook, and it is fantastic. Highly recommend it. In fact, I think everything I've mentioned so far is available in audiobook. So, go listen if you like, if that's your jam. But yeah, Second Chance Angel is a sci-fi noir story that Griff and I wrote. Griffin Barber, if you're not familiar, I'll get there, Cisca. Griffin Barber, if you're not familiar, is a career police officer and a big noir fan, just like me. So that one was so much fun to write. Cisca was holding Gunpowder and Embers, which is my collaboration with Chris Smith and John Ringo in a brand new universe where essentially it's sort of a post-apocalyptic where the apocalypse was caused by giant ants and dragons coming through an interdimensional rift into the world. So yeah, and the giant ants eat electricity, so there's been a step backward technologically because of that, because using electricity will bring the ants to you. So that one came out last
That
January,
sounds like it would convert very well to a video game
or a movie.
It kind of has a lot of that element to it.
It's got a kind of Gears of War sound to it.
Yeah. That one came out last January in hardback, and I think the paperback just came out a couple months ago, actually. So it's available in paperback now. Yeah.
It's in the stack of things you have to sign when you come back from Japan. You're late.
I'll warm my wrist up for you.
Wait.
Let's see what else besides that. I've had short stories in several anthologies that have come out by Baen. Like I said, Black Tide Rising was the first one. And I also published an anthology with Larry Correa called Noir Fatale. And I'm super happy to announce Larry and I have signed contracts for a volume 2 and a volume 3.
He announced that on April Fool's. I thought he was joking.
Nope, dead serious, dude. Dead serious.
You don't announce stuff on April Fools. It's either
well, he was like, yeah, I realized later what day it was.
I announced my comic book was getting a Netflix series on April Fools, and like everybody thought I was serious. I was just like, I was like heartbroken to tell him, like, nah, it's just like, I'm just joking, but thank you for all the support. You know?
Yeah. So Noir Fatale, that you just saw the cover of, that is an anthology of science fiction and fantasy stories. Isn't it though? It's so beautiful.
You guys did a really good job selecting stories for that one.
I'm like the resident art dude. I'm just like, yeah, that covers.
It's dope, right?
It's pretty awesome. Like if I saw that on the bookshelf, I'd be like, oh, I got to read this. Like,
knowing
nothing.
She, that anthology focuses on the noir trope of the femme fatale, the femme fatale character. And it was just, we got such good stories from the contributing authors. It was so much fun to do. And so for the second one, we haven't yet released the who is going to be involved in it, but that announcement should be coming soon, because we just finalized a couple things. And then so the second volume is going to be focused on the character trope of the detective, and the third one is, which I'm actually super excited about, is focused on the noir trope of the city as almost as another kind of character, if that makes sense. How
it absolutely does.
Yeah, if you think about a lot of like really classic,
that's a question we're going to ask you here later on.
if you think about a lot of really classic noir stories, there's a sense of place to them that is an integral part of the story. Like LA Confidential couldn't take place anywhere but LA, right? Not just because that's the name of it, but there's just something about the city during that time, and the way that the society was, and the government was, and the police.
Well, that was very key in all those noir type of books, novels, and including comics, is that the city is just as much a character as anybody else.
Yeah. So the third anthology is focused on that one, on the trope of the city as setting and character. Sorry.
Okay, so side question here, based on the noir, kind of scope, is what did you enjoy as a reader of noir? Love noir. Okay, so what? God, I had the question; it just left my face.
And not in the right way.
Are you asking?
Like, what was your favorite part? Like, because you're talking about detectives and the femme fatale and all these nuances that make noir. What do you think you enjoyed most, writing the detective or writing the femme fatale?
I think my favorite part of writing noir, honestly, is it's still writing about the interactions between characters, but my favorite noir part of it is actually using the interplay of light and shadow in both metaphoric terms and literal terms, of doing things like describing the light falling through the bars of the blinds onto the woman's face. If you know film noir at all, you know that's one of the hallmarks of the genre, is that they always had this interplay of light and shadow. Part of the reason for that was economic, because when they first started doing these, they didn't have the money. So, they didn't have the money for big fancy lighting setups that could fully illuminate the scene. So they would just get very dark and moody and atmospheric and just use like a single spot to highlight what was important. And you can do that as a writer as well within your exposition, and also a little bit within your dialogue too, if you're careful with it. And so I really like to try, and when I'm specifically writing a noir story, I like to focus a lot on where the light falls and how it hits something, and making sure that when I talk about those things, that it's actually illuminating something other than just what does the room look like.
And that's what made stories like The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca so paramount, and so just like it just digs into your brain and just leaves a mark, because they do use light and shadow also as like a character, which is just fascinating. It's what made comic books like Sin City so popular, is because Frank Miller really honed in on that. Will Eisner with the Spirit.
You see it in the movie version of Sin City, which is a fantastic noir story.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. We could talk hours about this. That's an entire different podcast.
Yeah.
Or just like you and me chatting on Facebook, like just talking about how awesome Sin City was.
We
But-
could always attempt to redo the noir anthology panel. We had that last time. Unfortunately, the group the hosting platform we used in our last iteration, if one person's failed, everybody's failed.
Yeah.
And so her Wi-Fi in Japan, ironic that it would be bad there, but her Wi-Fi there failed, and so the episode never aired. But it was a fun panel, and I think we could redo that.
Yeah,
when that one comes
would be a
out.
lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun.
I'll talk more all day long. Just it's so fascinating how it's become its own genre of literature, not only in like literary terms, but in comic book terms as well, because that's why you guys hired me as the comic book guy. But
We should see
Light and Shadow as a character, the
Yeah.
cityscape as a character in itself, probably more prominent than the actual, main characters themselves. It's so fascinating. We could dig into this for hours. I shit you not.
Yeah.
We will have to do that in a separate panel because we've already been here an hour. We haven't talked about the book we brought her on to talk about.
Don't even care. I'll talk to Kacey 3 hours. We'll make it a 3-hour super episode.
I mean, she's got kids. Sometimes they like eating. They're weird like that. So while all of those sound, I know. Well, I mean, you're talking to the fatty here, but so while all of those sound fascinating, why don't we talk about Sundown, the Murphy's Lawless Watch the Sky series? That's a mouthful right there. So where did you get the premise for this universe? How did you come up with the idea for the series? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, breathing in too much helicopter exhaust?
So Murphy's Lawless was not my idea. Murphy's Lawless is the intellectual property of Charles Gannon, Chuck Gannon, and he has a series with Bane called I think it's technically called the Tales of the Terran Republic, but everyone else calls it the Kane verse. So because his main character is Kane Reardon, and he's this like badass like super cerebral 007 type dude. But Chuck, thank you. I do too. I think it's beautiful. Chuck got kind of inspired by some of the shared world things that Chris Kennedy Publishing was doing, and came to Chris with this idea of expanding out a kind of a spin-off line of his main story. And so that was how we started with Murphy's Lawless. It was a group of, initially, I think it was 5 or 6 of us that were invited by Chuck to write these novellas, and they would be released like one every month, to feed the crack, to provide the crack for the readers to get their fix. And then after they were all out, Chuck would then take them, compile them, add some like connective tissue, and release it as a full novel. And so the first series of that is already out. It contains novellas by Mike Massa, Kevin Eikenberry, Griffin Barber, me, Chris Kennedy, and Mark Wandry. And then of course, Chuck is doing the overall thing. And that whole first season has been released. It was really popular. Murphy's Lawless, the overall novel, did really well. And so Chuck brought us back with, he's changing it slightly, so that we can bring in other people and give other people a break and stuff too. But this is the second season, and Sundown is the leadoff novella in the second season. It came out in March. And the story of the Murphy's Lawless is that essentially there's this group of soldiers. I say soldiers, but it's, airmen and Marines and whatever, group of fighters fighting people from Earth who were essentially kidnapped by aliens and disappeared from the battlefield. And they were just chalked up as battlefield casualties. Well, what really happened is they were taken by aliens in cryosleep to this other place and then awakened when Kane Reardon found them and was like, all right, well, here's what we need you to do. So now they have to essentially create a new life for themselves and find a new way to exist. And that's kind of what the whole story is. So Sundown is the story of, it's a story of Mara Lee, who's my main character. She's a helicopter pilot. And then also her crew chief, who is a Vietnam era MACV SOG guy who had some experience as a Huey crew chief. And so he kind of did both. In the first novella that I wrote, Mara enters into a relationship and becomes pregnant by one of the native people who are living on. There's also humans on this alien planet, which is there's a whole another story as to why that happens. But she ends up because of this relationship.
Aliens need love too.
Right. Because of this relationship and because of the fact that she's now carrying this child, she becomes a big like cultural bridge. Well, it turns out that there's this drug that she needs in order to continue the pregnancy healthy in space where she's safe. And so her crew chief's like, well, if she needs it, I'm gonna go get it. And he goes off the reservation and goes and gets it and gets the job done. And so the title Sundown is an homage to the song by Gordon Lightfoot. But it's also kind of about, because this book is so transitional, right? It's about the transition between, okay, we just got here and we're just getting our feet under us, and what comes next? How do we actually make this work? How do we make this a viable option? How do we create a society here? So yeah, that's where the title comes from. That's what the story's about. And it was a lot of fun to write. I really enjoyed it. I love the character of Elle. He was one of those characters who he started off as just sort of like a background character. And then he like stood up in my head and, was like, hey, bitch, I'm here. I've got shit to tell. Let me tell my story too, And when
Exactly.
a 6'5" black man, stone killer from Vietnam stands up in your head and says, hey, I got a story to tell. You're like, okay, tell me your story.
I could hear a bit more. Continue on.
Yeah.
Pretty much anybody in my head is telling me that stuff with like an aggressive tone. I'm like,
Right.
all right, let's hear what you got, kid.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's really great. I want to talk more about the cover. I really do.
Yeah, let's talk about the cover.
I love the
gorgeous.
cover. You have a sexy cover there, and
I wish I could take credit for it, but I am neither the artist nor did I source the art. So the art was all sourced by Chris Kennedy, who's the publisher.
right.
And the thing that's cool about the Murphy's Lawless covers is that so the next book in this series is actually coming out, I think, next week, and it is called Desperado by Kevin Eikenberry, and it is very similar cover art. So the concept is that the thematic elements are all the same. So you're going to have the same 3 silhouettes in the center. You're going to have the same skyscape, but then the details are different based on the details of the story. So
now do you have a say in the cover art, or did they just kind of like do it and show it to you and like hope you like it?
So I think, yeah, I mean, we could certainly make requests. In my case, they just did it and came up with this, and I was like, perfect, fuck yeah.
Well, and it's gold too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So mine has, if you look, you can see that like ship, like aircraft. Mm-hmm. That's actually a seaplane, and there's a seaplane that figures largely in my story. And you can see the shoreline and stuff because there's some again transition between working on the land and flying over the water, and that happens in my story. And Kevin's background is against a city, like a town, and that's because it has a lot more to do with his setting and stuff. So, but I just think it's such a cool concept that they have, they have these standard elements of, in the first season, it was again 3 silhouettes, but they were facing the camera instead of walking away. And if you look closely in this one, you can see it too. They have different gear. Like the guy on the right has the World War II style helmet.
Yeah.
Because he's from World War II. Yeah. Yeah. The dude on the left is, has much more modern gear. The dude in the center is alien.
Is that a dude or is it female?
You tell me.
Nick thinks everything's female.
We're really going to question my sexuality right now.
No, my point is that it could be either, right?
What I really like about this is that it, because I'm the resident art dude, apparently, whatever. Just because I draw funny books. Is like looking at the cover. Yeah, you got a lot of really cool, dazzling art going on there. Mm-hmm. It really draws you in. But what really draws you in as a potential consumer is that it's inviting you in as part of the story, as like a member of the squad. So I think that was a really good artistic choice from the artist that had the characters with their back towards you. you know, just like, because you're another member of the squad. You know, you get your rifle slung, you're there in formation, and you're walking along with them in this journey. And that invites me in. Like I would pick up that book on an instant just based on the cover.
Yeah,
you know?
Sure. Well, and it's neat too, because again, if you look at it from the progression with the first season where the three figures were facing you, and the first season was an introduction to who are these people? Who are they? Where do they come from? What are they bringing to this story? And then now we know them. Now we've become part of them, and we're walking alongside them. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's really cool.
I think the art is just like now.
I wish I knew the artist's name. I don't know.
Does the artist's name story before they make the artwork, or
I don't know the answer to that either.
Based on what you've described earlier and based on the cover art, it's just like it coincides. So it makes you think that like the artist read the book and like created this beautiful piece of work.
I think what happens is that Chris, the publisher, and Chuck, the editor, read the book and they say, okay, we want these elements to be included in the cover art, and they give that to the artist, and the artist is, says, okay, here it is. Because the first version of this picture that I saw, it didn't have the like mushroom plants. It had something else there, and I think Chuck said that
it makes it more alien.
Right, and I remember Chuck giving some feedback that he wanted some like alien flora, because that too is an important part of this story. It's not just background information. Like that's literally what Elle is looking for, is alien plant life. And so the artist added those in and made them match the flat top trees in the background, and it just works so well.
It is beautiful. Do you have do they send you a copy of it to hang on your wall?
I mean, I've got a high quality electronic version of it.
No, I would request like that would look super awesome on a metal print.
That would look cool. Yeah.
Like no joke. That is a beautiful piece of artwork. I don't have much room on my walls, but I would make room for that.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
No, I'm very impressed by the artwork, and I'm going to buy the book now. I'm going to jump on Amazon right after this and support a fellow artist. And
remember, you have to click the buy all button.
The buy.
Oh.
I am a grunt, Cisca. If it doesn't have pictures, it takes me a while. You're giving me like 3 years worth of work. I'll do it.
Thank you.
Most of my stuff's in audio, just so you know.
Oh, thank God. Is it on Audible?
Most of it, yeah.
Oh, God,
yeah, Sundown is not yet, but it will be eventually.
Thank God. Okay, so I'm going to buy everything on Audible.
There's a reason I listen to audiobooks at least 30 hours a week.
Jeez, I work 70 hours a week. So,
yeah.
Más o menos. That's Spanish.
All right. Yep. Now we're going to dive right into that story with the next question.
Okay. So can you tell us
hold on. The next question is still him. I'm the colorblind here, one doc. It's still Ranger Nick.
It is I, and I am him. And I'm pretty sure I'm green still. Sort of.
Number 22. This is why we lay off the
I know, I'm looking at it right now.
Thank
you, JR. I'm trying to add the humor element, which is what you brought me on for, that my impressive knowledge of geekery. So we talked about the cover, and God, I could talk about that cover. That's a whole podcast in itself, talking about that cover and how it coincides with the story. But moving on to the book itself, what would your 30-second elevator pitch for this novel be?
This is the story of what happens when a trained killer is motivated to go and get something in order to save the life of a teammate that he loves.
It's an altruistic tale.
Kind of a little bit, but also kind of not. Like, so the relationship between Elroy and Mara it's not a romantic one. It is very definitely,
and it doesn't have to be, which is great.
Right. It's very definitely it's an air crew relationship. They're a crew, and they take care of each other. And if she needs something, he's gonna go get it.
Yeah,
period.
Team is team.
Dot. Yep.
Yeah.
He's gonna go get it. And if you're going to stand, people are going to stand in his way and they're going to be eliminated because he's a bad dude.
Yeah.
So it's a story of a bad dude doing good stuff for someone he cares about.
No, I dig that. I dig the morality tale of it. That's really fascinating. And God, I don't want to ask you too many questions because I know spoilers will pop up because I love spoilers. I know people don't like spoilers, but I do. I want to know.
Well, we can talk offline, man.
Oh, absolutely. You'll be on the phone with me forever. All right. So let's dive into what makes your series special.
Well, this series or any of my own series?
This current series, what sets it apart from
so
other stuff you've done?
This current series is unlike anything that I've ever done. It is a shared world, but it is the best of a shared world. What's so cool about the way that Chuck set this up is that each of the authors essentially takes a main character and follows them through the sort of meta overarching storyline, and tells their story in their individual voices. And then Chuck takes it all and wraps it all together and creates like gives you like the whole picture. And I think that's what's so cool about it. So in this story of Sundown, the two main characters that I write about are Mara, the pilot, and Elle, her crew chief, Elroy, but calls him Elle. And then, but I also got to use Chalmers and Jackson, who are characters written by Griffin Barber, who's a really good friend and co-author of mine.
Nice.
I use
Roger.
I use Roger Murphy, who is Chuck's own main character. I use Nalurez, who's another character that I created, but like she's sort of public, everybody can use her because she's one of the native individuals. So yeah, it's the interaction between the different storylines to braid together to create the whole. I think that's kind of the coolest thing about this universe. So, and it is, I mean, Chuck is a genius. You guys need to have him on too, because he's so freaking smart. I'm a very smart individual. Like I am a very smart person, and Chuck will start talking sometimes, and I'm just like,
oh, God.
You lost me 3 words in, man. Like,
don't you hate that?
Can you go back?
It's kind of an ego check. You're like talking, like you consider, like I'm a pretty smart individual. I'm a very worldly person. I know things, and then you talk to somebody that makes you feel like
I have a master's degree, and this dude, I'm like, oh shit! And when he gets going with another friend of ours that Cisca knows, Rob Hampson, who's a neuroscientist, when Chuck and Rob get going, forget about it, man. You're like, I'm gonna go get a drink because
that's always a conflict of self when you're in a conversation with people and you're like, I'm used to being the smartest person in the room, and right now I feel like I should be dragging my knuckles on the floor as I get my next cocktail.
Right, which is one of my favorite things, honestly, about fandom and conventions and hanging out with fans, because there's a lot of smart people in the room, and there's always something to learn.
And it's great to pick their brains. I love talking to those people because I think their knowledge is eventually going to increase my knowledge, hopefully, if my dumbass can retain it. It's one of the best things ever to be self-aware and realize, I'm not the smartest person in the room, and that's okay.
I actually met Speaker to Lab Rats at the last HonorCon, and someone came in.
Fan name.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That's how he introduced himself. And someone came in and he was talking about the difference between cryogenics and what's the other word? It's basically the same thing. People get confused. It's been a couple of years, but anyway, somebody was asking him some off the wall conspiracy questions, and he's like, "Ma'am, I'm supposed to be nice, but that's not how science works."
You even science, bro?
Yeah.
Do you even science, bro?
We have an archive episode where we had Chuck on. Chuck holds the title for longest podcast interview.
Oh, I believe it. I don't
know.
And he's
let's see, count at, because we might be matching it.
He's super smart, but he's very personable, right? Like, he's not going to talk over your head. So when you talk to him, it's very, very interesting.
He's probably not condescending about it.
Not at all. No, super great guy. Super
smart people that would be like, they're very condescending. It's like, that's a big word that means this.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I'll punch you.
Gannon is really Gannon is very passionate about military issues too, because both of his sons are in.
Yes.
I know his one of his sons, he said, was with the 173rd, and I think the other one did the Ranger route.
Sucker.
I know one of his sons did.
Sucker.
So
I lived that life. I know he's a sucker. He bought the propaganda like I did, and it was true, all of it.
But the Kool-Aid tasted good, right? But anyway, let's move on.
But they delivered too.
But again, I have to remind us, we're here to pimp her stuff. I'm trying to be the voice of non-profanity.
So
how else?
So buy Sundown because it's amazing.
Okay, hold on.
If my squad leader could hear me now, trying to be the one not cussing, he would have a heart attack.
We all grow in change.
Goddamn, Ranger.
All right, so you get to ask her about the tropes. I don't think you asked that one. I don't know. We've been all over the place.
But when you say it like that, it's like you put me on the spot. Like it has to flow naturally. We know this.
Just use Walt's blunt force segue.
I like tropes.
Fine.
Let's talk about tropes.
Let's get tropalicious.
Okay, I feel there's like at least 4 more trope puns we could pop into this. Let's do that right now and get it out of the way.
We could call this awkward silence the tropopause.
Oh, if only I could put an eggplant emoji on here right now.
All right.
No, because we're all guilty of it. All of us that are writers, not you, JR.
And I'm not even, and he's the writer, not me.
I know, that's what made it funny. We're all guilty of tropes. Tropes are awesome. They're part of the trade craft. What do you think? What tropes in your book do you think you hit really well?
I think that I hit. So one of the things that I tried to do, particularly in Sundown, is I was very conscious of the fact that I was writing a character who has an experience that was very different than anything that I've ever experienced, in that he's a Black man who grew up in the 1960s. And so he faced a lot of discrimination, racism, difficulties that I only have academic knowledge, if that, about, right? So I tried to be very conscious of that and very sensitive to that, and really try to kind of do my research and try to extrapolate, like, okay, like how would I think about this, and I'll give an example, and I hope that it was successful. This actually occurred in the first book, in Promises, which introduces the 2 characters. But there's a scene in which Mara and Elle are talking, and Mara suddenly has this like horrified realization, like, oh shit, like you're not into me, are you? Because she cares a lot about him, but she's not, romantically. She's romantically involved with this other guy, right?
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And Elle says to her, "No, I'm not really into white women. That's a dangerous, that was a dangerous proposition when I was growing up," and just kind of leaves it at that.
Yeah.
My hope with that, and I think I was somewhat successful in being able to do that, was to kind of reflect that this was the reality that he grew up in, but not like make it such a huge deal, because I feel like for someone in the situation that he's in, where he's been kidnapped by aliens, like he's got bigger kind of fish to fry.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just sort of right. It's just sort of a part of his background that, like, yeah, he's not attracted to white women because that was that was something that was that was a dangerous thing to do. That was not a good idea when he was growing up,
absolutely not.
Right.
When
and
you look at that lens from the present to the past, it totally makes sense.
So I don't know if that's necessarily a trope, because racism is real, and people having those experiences are real, but it was something that I definitely wanted to try and address, and try and have, just as real people have to deal with those experiences, I want my characters to have to deal with those experiences too. Even if it's just in the background, it's still going to inform who they are and how they act now. Does that make sense? I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I mean, like if you deal with a character that comes from that part of time where that type of relationship was, taboo and forbidden, and you're introduced to a character that is from a different point in time telling you, listen, it's kind of cool now, well, not cool, like it's some sort of bad thing, but like it's an accepted part of societal reality.
It's no longer dangerous.
Yeah, it's no longer dangerous. Yeah. Like it's no longer taboo. It's okay. You know, like you can do this stuff. And if I was to tell you what else is accepted in today's society, you'd probably shit a kitten, Yeah.
Yeah. And so in Sundown specifically, one of the other ways in which I tried to carry that forward is that, I have Elroy having a good relationship, a bonding relationship with this character that Griffin wrote called Jackson. And part of the reason that they're drawn to each other is because they're two of the only Black men who were part of this group of abducted personnel. And so they recognize that, and because of their individual histories of being perceived as a minority and being perceived as, having to be brothers sticking together, they kind of gravitate toward each other. And then they actually develop a friendship with each other because they're able to relate to each other on that level. I agonized over writing this because I don't know what that's like personally. I don't. I asked a lot of friends. I was like, hey, can you talk to me about how this would feel, how this would, research. And yeah, I tried to do a lot of research, and I'm still like, oh God, I hope that I didn't fuck that up, because it's a sensitive subject.
Well, it's but hard as a writer when you're dealing with something outside your wheelhouse.
Right. But I wouldn't be doing the character justice if I didn't try. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, at least for me. But then again, I'm the smartest one among us. But no, I'm just kidding.
Yes,
I am a total ape. I am really not. No,
but you're so smart.
But that is a very tricky thing to do as a writer. Is to deal with a topic that is outside your wheelhouse, outside of your experience level, and do it justice.
Yeah.
But from what you've told me, I think you've done everything within your possible range of power to make sure that it was accurate as possible.
Well, I appreciate that. And like I said, I am not one of those people who thinks that, I don't think that writers should limit themselves to only writing about people who look like themselves, because I think that's a limitation. Well, and it's harder to, how do you understand other people if you don't ever try to see things from their perspective, right?
You do it by talking to them, conversations.
Right. So, but again, I do feel that there is a responsibility to try and get it right and try and do it justice and do it with respect,
Absolutely.
And you can't do that without asking the questions and without
and unfortunately you have to ask hard questions, which was probably very uncomfortable and very challenging to do.
A little bit. Bit. It's helpful.
No,
you know what? I'll say one thing. That is one thing that is good about the military, is that, because we do crazy shit together, and we, like when you can greet someone like, hey, motherfucker, and that's like a friendly greeting, like you've already got a little bit of a connection there, so that you can go to someone and be like, hey, motherfucker, I got some like slightly uncomfortable questions I want to ask. Are you cool with that? And they could be like, well, maybe, or no, not really, or I don't know what kind of questions, but the fact that you already have that basis of, I don't know, connection or informality or something, it allows, trust. It allows that there's a baseline level of trust there that you can access that. And it allows for not just you to be able to ask those questions, but for them to give you like no shit, like no BS answers, So
well, that's what I loved about the military, is like we all bled green, I don't care what branch, we were all green, blue, or whatever color identifier each branch wants to have. Didn't matter. We all wore a uniform that said US whatever, So, I loved it that like racism was not really a thing. It really wasn't, if you think about it.
I see less of it with interpersonal relationships within the military than I do outside of the military. I'm not going to say that it's not a thing, because I think that it still exists.
It still can be.
It is. But you kind of get what I'm saying. It's like as far as like a societal achievement of what we all want to achieve as a society, of like no racism whatsoever, I think the military has it pretty much like 90% contained. Like we are all, especially, oh my God, throw them into an infantry platoon or an infantry company. We're all different races, different mixes of life, and we coexist. I don't know how it is in the rest of the branches, how in the rest of the MOS is. However, I'm only speaking for the infantry aspect because we all put our lives, in the hands of somebody else, in the other member of the team. No matter what their skin color is, their religion, sexual orientation, any of those like criteria, we just don't care. Can you do the job? Can you get my back? I got your back. You got my back. All right, cool. Let's go over and wreak havoc.
Yeah. This is a very long and fraught topic that there's a lot of nuance to. I think that you're right in that there's a sense within a lot of military specialties that like, hey, if you can do the job, that's question number one. Can you do the job? Are you competent or are you not competent? If you're competent,
get my back. Can you make sure I come home?
Stay. If you're not competent, you have to go. That being said, No,
I'm not saying racism does not exist.
The military is not perfect, right?
I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying as far as like if we were to have like a metric of like success as like having a non-racist entity, I think the military is probably the closest version of that, just based on the job.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I could be wrong. I as a unlicensed and sociologist, it would be very interesting to explore, but just based on my own experiences, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, based on my own experiences.
Sure.
I did 20 years. This is what I saw. This is how I can relate to it. I think the military is probably the best melting pot of what we're supposed to be.
Because we hated everybody equally.
Right.
Yeah.
I will tell you that
when fuckface is a greeting,
your experience is 100% valid, dude, but it is only your experience. And
exactly.
I think that
I totally take
if one of my very close friends, I won't say her name because I haven't asked her permission to, but she's a Black woman and she served almost 20 years in the military. And I would be interested to have this conversation with her, as part of the panel too, to see how her experience contrasts with yours. Yeah, because it's going to be different.
Oh, it absolutely is going to be. And I don't take anything away from that. But then again, I have different experiences than a lot of people. I have different experiences than JR and Don.
Yeah, I mean, Nick never really had to work with women.
I really didn't. And that's what kept me from going back in the infantry as a commander, because, I know myself well enough to know that I grew up in a certain era in the military, knowing that I'm a freaking dinosaur. I'm a relic. My mentality and my thinking on how things are done. So well, yeah, that, and you jump out of planes a certain amount of times, especially Hueys. Thank you. You get certain physical disadvantages, but I digress.
Yeah, we got way off topic on this one. Sorry, dude.
We went down a rabbit hole there. Like we hit some social issues there, but but at the end of the day, everyone's experiences are different. I just like to think that the military probably as a whole has probably the best cohesion.
I think your experience is very much because as a grunt who also worked with transportation companies. Let's be clear in this day and age.
Yeah, let's be clear. That
means transportation, not transgendered.
But the atmosphere in esprit de corps in a combat unit versus a support unit versus a rear echelon unit, they're all wholly different things. And I think the difference is when that regardless of whether I like the way he looks or who he's attracted to or whatever, that I live or die based on his actions, and the reverse is true. It sort of forces you to ignore whatever preconceptions you have or you die. And that's pretty much because we served in a nation at war. I don't know that experience would even translate if we were, say, in the Cold War where we weren't getting shot at and dodging bullets. So, but let's move on to talking about less thorny subjects, and we will jump right back into her books. So, Kacey, what subgenre or genre does this story fit in? Because I know as an author, you're sort of like the Schrodinger's cat of genre authors because you can't really pick. So how would you classify Sundown?
Sundown is military science fiction. Yeah,
That was
is.
quick.
Well,
There we
because
go.
it's fighters, combatants kidnapped by aliens and cryo frozen to be woken up on a later, on a alien planet with the same level of technology that they are used to using. So yeah, it's military science fiction.
If that cover doesn't tell you that, I got some beachfront stuff in Nevada I want to sell you.
Ranger Nick, be nice. We have listeners who don't watch the videos over on the lovely folks at Spotify on Anchor FM.
But
Hi,
this is a
Spotify
perfect
of this show.
opportunity to pimp our YouTube channel. You should totally check it out, where you can see me make eye rolls and questionable facial expressions, and we talk about really cool artwork that you actually get to see. Because, yeah, we can talk about the books all day long, but the cover work is awesome.
So,
right, I'm done. I'm just telling you, I want our listeners to see us too.
Okay. So, we talked some about your characters, but would you say your main character is your crew chief?
Of Sundown, yeah. The main character is Elle. Yes.
Yes.
Sundown is Elroy's story.
Yeah.
My main character in the overall Murphy's Lawless arc is Mara, the pilot. Mm-hmm.
So you've talked some about him throughout this, but would you also, we're gonna kind of glaze over him because he's great. But would you say you have any cool secondary characters that come out? Or is it just that Amara is now the secondary? She took a back seat.
No, because one of the main themes of the story centers around her. She just gets less screen time than Elle does. But I do have a really, really cool secondary character. She showed up in Promises, and she's also figures largely in Sundown. And she's got a growing role within the overall arc of Murphy's Lawless, and her name is Nalyiris. She's one of the spin dog medics, which is sort of like a cross between a super highly trained doctor and geneticist and like a herbalist. So
herbalist. Okay, that's different.
Yeah, she's she is the sister of the spin. So the allies of the kidnapped soldiers and whatnot, they're all collectively known as Murphy's Lawless. They have allied with this group called the Spin Dogs that live on spaceborne spin habitats in the system. And Mara's the father of her child is Nalyiris's brother. And spoiler alert, he dies in the first book. But so Nalyiris and Mara are very good friends, and they they have now nieces in common and stuff. And then through Mara and now Elle and knows Nalyiris and kind of has a little bit of a crush on her, but it's completely unrequited, and he'll never act on it. But I did try to write that in a little bit because I think that's realistic too. No, it isn't. You don't always the person you admire doesn't always feel the same way back. So
that's true.
That's okay.
So a little bit about how the sausage is made. Did you have any really great scenes or ideas that you're going to have to put off to another book, or did you pull any from doing?
So I guess just the character of Elle, I was able to develop him more fully. Like in the first book, I knew that he was a MACV-SOG operative who had a background as a Huey crew chief, and that's how he became Mara's crew chief. And so I was able to delve more into his background in Sundown. So we get to see a little bit more about how he became, the stone killer that he is, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the world. Well, actually, we've probably talked a lot about the world. Is there anything else you want to add?
Deep dive into it
about the world.
The world of Sundown.
Yeah.
So the thing that's really one of the things that's really cool about it is that it is a little bit of a tabula rasa. There's, Chuck has been really great about soliciting kind of our inputs and our thoughts about how do we want to do this? What kind of setting do we want to play in? What sort of operations do we want to see going? I'm pretty sure he added in seaplanes specifically for my benefit so that I could get some cool aviation scenes going. So that's one of the things that's really cool. But the setting itself is a classic like collision of cultures type of environment. And that's always interesting for me to play with because, as I said at the beginning, the thing that's interesting to me about stories is the interactions between humans, or humans and aliens, whatever the case may be, between characters.
Okay.
So we've skipped around a little bit, and Cisca jumped the gun because she got a little premature on her question asking. So you get to ask her about the back alley fight scene, and given that you're a grappler, you thought this was perfect for you. And then when she talks about that fight, you get to critique her description. So it is 29 on the order in the batting list.
I hope you're editing that part out. That's horrible.
Nope.
Okay, speaking of characters, if you ever met your characters in a back alley, how would they treat you after the hell you've put them through? How do you see that interaction playing out?
I don't think Elle would do anything to me because at the end of the day, he's a kind of an old school gentleman. He'd probably be a little bit pissed at me, but I'm still a woman. And so he'd be like, all right, whatever, you bitch, Right. I do injure him in this. But at the same time, I also kind of make it clear that it's his choice. He's knowingly taking this injury upon himself in order to do what he has to do to help out his pilot. So I think, I don't know, I like to think that if I met him in a back alley, he'd be cool with me. We'd be all right. Mara would probably try to kick my ass. Cause I mean, I made her pretty emotionally vulnerable to begin with, and then dropped her into this planet, had her fall in, like this whirlwind relationship. She gets knocked up, her baby daddy dies, and now she's got all these other things to deal with. And I have not been kind to her. So Mara would probably kick my ass. In fact, this is how it would probably go down. I walk out into the back alley. Mara and Elle are coming the other way. Mara sees me. We all stop. We have that classic stare down moment. Mara lunges at me. Elle grabs her and holds her apart and is like, get the fuck out of here. Go. Just get the fuck out of here. While he's holding her back from physically attacking me. That's how it would go down. Yeah.
I love it. All right.
So hold on for just a second. With your habitat deal that you did for the world building, were you inspired by the TV version of a certain sci-fi franchise? The Belters?
No, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Neither do the rest of us.
Wow.
I'm looking at the show notes going,
Apparently,
I'm ad-libbing.
one of you have watched the what's it freaking called now? Ringo and
I'm going to ask another question. Is that cool? Can I do that?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I had permission before I get stabbed via the internet.
Bend over. Expanse. That's it.
Expanse. Okay. Now that you got it out there,
I never watched it.
I haven't watched it
either. I thought everyone knew who the Belters were.
I've listened to books 1 through 6.
No. Dude, I don't want, I very rarely watch TV. And when I do, it can't be anything close to what I'm writing because I'll cross-contaminate.
Yeah, influenced.
I haven't seen it either, because I don't have time to watch TV, but I knew who the Belters were.
Well, because Chuck's obsessed and gushed about it for 30 minutes. So
sorry, bro.
Chuck ruined it for you.
Oh my.
Anyway, go, Nick. Right. Go. All
right, so let's get a little sneak peek at how the sausage is made here.
No, we asked that.
We already did that one.
She's stole the thunder.
Jesus. Now I feel unprofessional.
Next is 32.
Hope you edit that out because I feel like a child that's being led around by a binky.
I mean, that's how it is with Doc. She's like that. Just roll with it.
God. All right. Usually I'm pretty adaptive. Today I'm like off my game. Sundown is clearly part of a series. I know because it says so on Amazon. There's currently one book out in the series. So is there a story done? Will there be more from the characters? Where do you see this going? What's next?
So because this is a shared world type of series, there is a new another installment that, like I said, I think it's coming out next week from the time that we're recording this. So it might already be out by the time your viewers see it. It's called Desperado by Kevin Eikenberry. It is fantastic. It's so good. So good. So yeah, that's one of the things that's great about this model is that you get, like I said, we're feeding you your crack fix, right? Every month a new installment will come out, and then at the end of all of them, Chuck will integrate them all together into a novel with additional material to kind of tell the full story from all perspectives, and it's really cool. So look for Desperado by Kevin Eikenberry, and then the third installment is by Bill Webb, and I don't think the title of that one has been released yet. But that'll be the second season. Is just going to be, the first season was all 6 novellas. The second season is only going to be 3 novellas, and then the third season will be another 3 novellas after that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, okay. It's really cool.
Oh, God, my poor bank account right now with all these books.
Amazon Prime, or not Amazon. What's it called? Kindle Unlimited.
Kindle.
They'll all be free on Kindle Unlimited.
Oh, I'm so there. I already have a subscription. This benefits me greatly.
Yeah.
We all know that every literary universe has its own internally consistent rules of science, technology, magic, if it's existed in that world. What sort of tech could we expect from these books?
So that's one of the things that's really cool about it is that because each of the lost soldiers that make up Murphy's Law List was taken from their own time frame with their own equipment, they in this future setting where they've woken up out of their cryosleep, they have access to replication technology. So Mara, who is she's also qualified on the H-60, but she grew up flying a Huey. She's flying a Huey because they were able to replicate a Huey. So they're all, you've got it's this really cool juxtaposition of technology from World War II all the way up until like the early 90s. And then you have that plus some of the far advanced alien technology that we only get like a tiny glimpse of. But what we do get to see is really cool. So
how do you balance the varying levels of lethality of technology from the 1940s through the 1990s plus the alien pew-pews?
Lots of communication with Chuck and the other authors. Yeah, lots of communication. It's really cool. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, Doc, next one is your favorite.
If you had any piece of technology from this and abused, what would it be? And what would you do?
So you kind of cut out. I think you're asking me if I could have any piece of technology from this story, what would it be? Is that correct?
Yes.
And then how would you abuse it?
Remix.
And how would I use it? I mean, it's super tempting to say a Huey, but I do have access to a Huey, and it's a lot of fun to use.
Okay, so here's where I come in. Having been participant of a Huey writer 2 or 3 throughout my career, what would you add to the Huey to make it more
cooler?
I don't know. Like if you could change anything on the Huey, what would it be?
On my Huey that I fly on?
On any Huey. Like
so let me explain something to you about the Huey. Okay. The Huey was designed in the 1950s.
Yes, it was.
The tail models that I fly are 1969 model tails, right? All of them are old. They're old as fuck. The Huey is an incredibly capable machine, but it does have vulnerabilities. That's the reason the Black Hawk exists. The Sikorsky engineers literally took a Huey, broke it down, listed out all of the vulnerabilities, and designed the Black Hawk to address every single one of those vulnerabilities. That's the reason why the Black Hawk doesn't have underfloor fuel tanks, because Hueys were getting shot out of the sky by rounds piercing the fuel tanks. That's the reason why the Black Hawk has a fully articulated rotor system rather than the Huey's semi-rigid rotor system, because the Huey the rotor literally teeters on the mast, and if you hit it hard enough, it'll break off. You have to maintain 1 G of positive force on this, or you'll mass bump, and again, you'll lose your rotors, which they're your lifting surface, so that's bad. That's the same was true of the Cobra, actually, too, which was one of the major vulnerabilities of the Cobra as a gunship platform, because it had the same rotor system as a Huey. So one of the major vulnerabilities of that is that it couldn't do negative G. So what that means is that if you have an obstacle, here's my can. Can you see this? This is like a ridge, right? If you have an obstacle, I can't do this. It's not working. If you have an obstacle, like a ridge line, if you have an obstacle like a ridge line, and you have a helicopter flying at it, the Huey and the Cobra can't do this thing called bunt, right? Which is where you go up and then you come down, because if you just do that with a cyclic movement, you'll have negative G, and that'll cause a mass bump. So with a fully articulated rotor system, you're a lot more maneuverable in that realm, and it's a much more robust type of rotor system for like hardcore maneuvering, especially at like low speeds and stuff. So, which is, the kind of thing that you're going to want for a gun platform, which is what the Cobra was. So that's the reason why the Apache, which was the successor bird to the Cobra, has a fully articulated rotor, because they were addressing those vulnerabilities. So you're asking if there's anything that I could change about the Huey. If you change the Huey, she's not the Huey anymore. She's a Black Hawk, or some other aircraft. But like any platform, she's not perfect. So if I was going to like design a perfect helicopter, it wouldn't be a Huey.
It would be the Huey.
Right. She wouldn't have those vulnerabilities. Does that make sense? Now, if you're asking,
it totally does. If
I could take like my Huey that I fly at work and do one thing to for whatever reason, I'd probably mount miniguns in the doors and go play on the range for a while, which is a thing that can happen, but won't,
Eggplant emoji.
All right, so
right there.
What kind of well, you said it was only minimal with the alien tech. So like normally this question, when we're talking to sci-fi authors, it's either cool magic, which we don't have here, or cool new whiz bang tech that we don't have here. So
question.
It's a fun question, but with your concept, which I didn't realize when I prepped these show notes, where they're coming from out of time with their equipment out of time. So is there any of the technology you added other than the existing tech that you would want to take with you from the world?
Oh, you gave me another question, JR. Damn you.
Not so much tech, but the native flora and fauna of Rabak, the planet that they're living on. There's something weird going on there. There's something that we don't fully understand yet. And they've got some really cool properties. There's this like dish that I invented for the first book that is like delicious, and it's like a bowl of grains and meat or whatever, and you eat it and it like fills you up for the whole day. And there's this other thing that's like a coffee like stimulant that I have in Sundown that essentially has no crash to it. At least that's the first, that's what you think at first.
Why are we not funding this?
So, but it's all alien plant life, right?
No,
so
we should be funding this. A coffee with no crash? Like, why are we not funding this as a government?
So yeah, so I would take the native flora of Rabak if I could.
I was expecting you to say the replicator technology would be what you would grab.
Like that'd be pretty. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool too.
And if you did bring that replicator, what would you steal as you are abusing the technology, which is the other fun part of that?
I mean, I'd make a helicopter that was mine, that I didn't have to give back. And unlimited fuel.
I love a person that's passionate about their craft.
That works. See, that's the sad thing about they don't let us keep our gear we go to war with, because I wish I could have brought my rifle home.
I built Natasha the best I could on the civilian market.
Yeah, an AR-15 just isn't the same as Emily. She was a good rifle. But anyway, that's going to get awkward.
Lost loves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So clearly this interview is winding down. We've been here for almost 2 hours. So before we wrap this up, was there anything, is it even possible that we didn't ask you about Sundown that you want to tell us?
I just want to point out that for those of you who are balling on a budget, it's the price is right on this one. It's free if you're in Kindle Unlimited. It is $2.99 otherwise because it is a novella. It's not a full length novel, and but it's a complete story, and I really think you guys would like it. So I hope you give it a shot.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, dear listeners, that I'm going to read the shit out of this.
And you know what? Can I pimp my like social media presence and stuff too?
Oh,
This
this
is
is
an awesome
awesome.
You guys want to talk to me?
Yo, stuff.
Yeah. Tell me. I am very interested in feedback on this book or any of my other books. So you can find me on Facebook at Kacey Ezell. If you just search that, my author page will come up. I'm also on my website is kaceyezell.net. If you go to that website, you can sign up for my mailing list where I try to get weekly emails out. I kind of suck at it a little bit sometimes because, life and shit, but I'm doing my best. So, y'all bear with me. Yeah, you can get like my weekly newsletter and respond to those. And I again, not necessarily always timely, but I do try to always write back. So yeah, you can find me there. You can find me on MeWe as Kacey Ezell.
MeWe?
I'm on Instagram.
Nice.
MeWe, yep. I'm on Instagram as Kacey Ezell. So come find me and let me know what you guys think.
Now, for
But
the
don't stalk
MeWe and
too
all the
hardcore.
others, are you using the letter K and letter C?
No, it's
Or-
KACEY
Okay, so your full name?
EZELL, just like on the book cover. Yeah.
Got it.
And don't stalk too hard though, because her husband is a badass who knows how to shoot a gun.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I am not the scariest person in my family. Just remember that.
Well, now you just made friends that are scary too. So like the tried pros, Casey.
So, and this is where we remind you, dear listener, in our old podcast, we had this saying that book reviews matter. They help the right reader find the right books. So please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platform. So if you read her book and you like her book, hop on over to Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, Audible, all the places fine book retailers operate, and leave a review.
Please
And
do.
if you like this one, check out our other ones and follow us on YouTube or Anchor. But JR is going to tell you how to do all that now.
So now you can find us on our website, which is anchor.fm/blasters tech and tech blades, anchor.fm blasters tech and tech blades, the fine folks at Spotify that host us for free. We have a Twitter at SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. We have an email at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. And our Facebook group is facebook.com/blastersandbladespodcast. And you can support the show and help keep the lights on at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. And please put in the comment section that they offer you. It's for the podcast. So we separate all of that stuff out on the bookkeeping. And if there's any extra after we keep the lights on, Cisca and Nick get their next bourbon or whatever they're drinking. So bring us home, Doc.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. For Nick Garber, J.R. Handley, the amazing Kacey Ezell, I am Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, where we indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, picking on JR, and everything that goes boom.
And this is where we have the awkward silence.